Supervisor Mitchell, if you're ready, we can start housekeeping.
Thank you. Please do.
All right.
Thank you for participating in today's meeting. Please do not connect to Zoom or teleconference while in the room, and please silence all devices. Click on the globe at the bottom of your screen to select either English or Spanish. Public comment will be taken after each item. If you are in the auditorium and wish to comment, please use the iPads located in the lobby. For meetings in other locations, please complete a blue speaker card and provide it to a South Coast AQMD employee. Speakers may be limited to a total of 3 minutes or less for all agenda items, and times may be shortened to ensure all speakers can be heard. A countdown timer will be displayed on the screen for each public comment. Word time will be allotted for Spanish translation that is not simultaneous. For questions or issues on public comment, please call the public advisor at 909-396-3247. That's 909-396-3247. Please adhere to the speaker time limit and treat others with courtesy, civility, and respect. Failure to do so can result in your mic being muted or you being removed from the meeting. Be aware that this meeting is being recorded. By participating, you are authorizing recording of audio and visual content presented during the live event and consent to subsequent use of the recording in the public domain by South Coast AQMD.
Supervisor, we're ready whenever you are to bring the meeting to order.
We are ready as well. If you determine there's a quorum, let's please call the meeting to order and call roll, please.
Good morning. Councilmember Cacchiotti?
Here.
Senator Delgado?
I'm here. I'll be on camera in a second.
Board Member Padilla-Campos? Absent. Mayor Salache? Absent. Chair McCallan? Absent. And Supervisor Mitchell?
Present.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
We have a quorum. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. As your vice chair, in Mayor McCallum's absence, I will be chairing today. So buckle up.
Buckled up.
Let's go ahead and get started with agenda item number 1, which is our update on proposed amendment rule 1146.2, emissions of oxides of nitrogen from large water heaters and small boilers and process heaters. We'll hear a staff presentation from Ms. Farr.
Good morning, Vice Chair Mitchell, members of the committee. My name is Heather Farr, here to present proposed amended rule 1146.2. Next slide, please. By way of background, this rule was adopted in 1998, and it establishes NOx limits for large water heaters, as well as small boilers and process heaters. This is mainly applies to the manufacturers, distributors, installers, and operators. This amendment is necessary to implement the 2022 AQMD, which strove to get strove to have zero emission limits wherever would be shown to be technically feasible. There was a control measure specifically for these type of units. We have had a public process. We've been working on this rule for about a year. We've had 5 public meetings, as well as our public workshop and our public consultation meeting. We've met with numerous groups, conducted site visits, talked to interested parties. Next slide, please. Just wanted to provide a kind of a wider picture of the AQMD regulations for water heaters and boilers. We do have multiple rules that apply to these types of units, mostly separated by size. So the smaller units would fall under 1121 and 1146.2. Those are smaller non-permitted units. In addition, we have regulations for the larger units, the 1146 and 1146.1, which those are larger permitted units that the regulation is mostly on the operator and owners. Next slide, please. Staff did conduct a rigorous best available retrofit control technology assessment for all the categories within this rule, and we did identify zero emission technologies for each one of those. We largely relied on heat pump technology, which are zero emission and are very efficient units. And we did identify heat pumps for every one of the categories in 1146.2. Next slide, please. Thank you. So we do have a large universe of equipment. We estimate there's around 5.6 ton per day. So that's about 9% of our NOx emissions from stationary source. So it's a significant contributor of NOx. And the reason that's so high is because we have so many units. We have over 1 million units that are subject to this rule. One of the more significant one are pool and spa heaters. There's over 700,000 of those. And those particular units have not had a lower NOx limit since the rule was adopted in 1998. So they did show to have a big contribution to those emissions. And there are heat pump technology available for pool heaters that are, commercially available and operating in our jurisdiction. Next slide, please. And we did want to just provide kind of a big picture. The amendments that we were proposing really does align with other air quality agencies and climate goals. The Bay Area has already established zero emission standards for these units to go into effect in 2027, 2031. In addition, the California Air Resources Board, they're in rule development, looking at zero emission technologies, as well as the California Energy Commission, which is looking to set building codes to encourage zero emission installation, and the Public Utilities Commission and Cal ISO. We are looking at, who is looking at like greening the grid. We are currently at about 33.6 renewables, projected to go up to 60% in 2030. And that donut graph there just shows in 2022, the different mix of power that's contributing to our grid. Next slide, please. So the key proposals for 1146.2, we are proposing zero emission technologies, but at future effective dates. So we have sooner dates for new buildings. So when a new building is constructed and you put a new unit in, it will have to meet zero if it's past a future effective date. Those new buildings are just more ready for zero emission than an existing building that would require some retrofits. And kind of the next bank is existing commercial industrial buildings. When new water heaters or boilers were installed, they will have to meet the zero emission at those future effective dates. And then existing units, we established unit ages within the rule. So once those existing units meet a certain age, they will also have to transition to zero. And kind of the last bank is for the other units. These are typically going to go into an existing residential building, and that will transition to zero really through the supply chain. So through the manufacturer, distributor, retailer, and installer. Next slide, please. So this is showing our zero emission compliance schedule. Not only do we break it into sooner days deadlines for new buildings, but we also have 3 different phases that really has to do with the size of the units and what's commercially available now. So the smaller units, they're more easy to transition to zero. That first date for new buildings is actually aligned with the building code. So those new units will have to meet at zero regardless. And then we established a 2029 for existing units. And then the next phase is those larger water heaters as well as pool heaters. And then the last phase we have are for these high temperature units, what are typically known as boilers. We do acknowledge that those are going to need some more time to transition. We have found examples of units that can meet zero, but they're not widely commercially available. So we're proposing 2029 for new buildings and 2030 for existing. Next slide, please. And so we did include some compliance flexibility in the rule to address some of the challenges that we've identified. The first one is if a facility needs electrical upgrades, they're really outside of their control. So the utility needs to do work to bring that power to the facility. We're allowing up to 2 18-month delays before that compliance deadline would go into effect. We're also including a compliance option for facilities who have a lot of units. So if you have multiple units, more than 5, we're allowing you to submit a compliance plan to kind of phase those units in. We also included a provision for emergency replacement. This is a concern that stakeholders brought to us. So if your water heater goes down and you need that hot water to run your business, we're going to allow you like a rental period of about 6 months. So you can have that bridge for if you need to bring electrical to support that new unit. We're also providing additional time for mobile home units that have existing instantaneous water heaters. Those tankless units are typically higher BTUs. They say they will fall under 1146.2, and there are some installed in mobile homes. So we are extending the deadline for those as well. And then we did include a low use exemption for large units that are used at less than 3,000 therms per year. Next slide, please. So, we do acknowledge that some of these units are not widely commercially available. So as we frequently do, we're proposing to do a technology check-in or status update. So this will allow us to go and look at those technologies that, again, aren't very widely available, largely those high temperature units, and just ensure that there's market readiness. We can reassess some of the costs, look at any of the challenges. So that will be then reported back to this committee by January 1st, 2028. So before all of those future effective dates go into effect. Next slide, please. There are a couple of key issues that we would like to discuss. And the first one is that the technology is not widely available. And again, this largely is focused on those high temperature units, again, what many people consider boilers. And we do acknowledge that more time is needed. And that's why we did propose those later compliance dates of 2029 for new buildings, 2033 for existing. And those replacements won't have to happen. Those aren't fixed deadlines. It's really a two-tier regulation where once those future effective dates go into effect, and when the unit reaches the end of its useful life. So it won't be that it has to be replaced right away at 2033, just when that unit is at 25 years of age. And in addition, as I mentioned, that status update technology check-in will provide the opportunity for staff to reassess to see how the technology has progressed and report that back to this committee. Next slide, please. The other key issue that we heard is the cost. That transition to zero will have an additional cost burden. And we do acknowledge that this rule is an expensive rule. We do have really a wide range of costs depending on the types of units. Some of them we've actually seen some cost savings to transition to heat pump. Some of them we've seen some pretty substantial additional cost. That upfront cost for this, so we're requiring this on unit replacement. So we really looked at the delta, how much more that heat pump would be than a conventional unit. And some of those costs are offset by projected fuel switching savings. So when we looked at the forecasts of utilities between gas and electric, we do see that gas is going up more than electric. So when we look at those future costs and couple that with the efficiency gains you get with a heat pump, they're like 3 to 6 times more efficient than a gas unit. We are finding some fuel saving costs. So that will help offset some of those upfront costs. In addition to that, we do have incentives. There is the Federal Inflation Act that is available through 2032 that could be used to help offset these costs. There's also a statewide initiative, Tech Clean California Rebates, which is providing rebates for heat pump installations, as well as AQMD is also working on our own program to have rebates to help, and that would apply to some of the units covered by 1146.2. We also feel that market adoption, some of those high temperature units we looked at were like custom engineered, so they will be more expensive. But that future, as the technology matures and you get more off-the-shelf units, we do believe those costs will come down, which is something we'll look at when we do that technology check-in. Next slide, please. So we want to talk about the impacts of 1146.2 and the California Environmental Quality Act. Now, since 1146.2 is implementing the 2022 AQMP control measure, the impacts were already assessed in their final program environmental impact report. So there's no new impacts that have been identified. So they're going to rely on that document for this amendment. Next slide, please. And we wanted to talk a little bit about the costs, and we're going to start more on an individual basis. So this slide is just showing an example of what those costs could be for one of these residential pool heaters. So the additional cost, again, that delta for the heat pump from the combustion is around $2,300. But we've estimated that over the lifetime of operating that unit, there will be a $3,000 in operation cost. So the electricity that you're going to be paying for is going to be less than the gas you would have paid for that heat pump. We do have a little breakdown of what those costs are. I just want to point out the panel upgrade of $625. We're not stating that that's what the entire panel is going to cost, but when we look forward at the different zero emission regulations we have, we guys kind of just took a portion of that for that electrical panel. Those panels they have a much longer lifetime than our residential pool heaters. So that is just a ratio of what those costs would be. So then big picture, when you look at this, if you need a panel update or not, it could be somewhere from a $700 cost savings or a $75 cost savings. For the socioeconomic impact assessment, we did add in additional costs in case there's extra installation costs, just to address some of the feedback that we've received about installing these units. Okay, next slide, please. So our socioeconomic impact analysis is not due out until 30 days before the public hearing, but we did want to provide some initial costs, as we do understand it's an expensive rule. And so these numbers are from 2026 to 2057. We are estimating is between 61 to 97 million annually. And that range is because it depends on if there's panel installations that are needed. Not every situation will require a panel installation. If there are those extra costs for installation. So that's why we have a range. And of those costs, 40% of it is for panel upgrades. When it comes to those residential units, about 18% are pool heaters and 21% are for those instantaneous or tankless heaters. There is a projected $1,000 jobs foregone. That doesn't mean 1,000 people losing their job, but just less job growth projected in the future. And really, one of the main reasons this rule is so expensive is just how many units are actually covered by it. There are over 1 million units that would be covered by 1146.2, with about 5.6 ton NOx reduced. Next slide, please. So staff did conduct a cost effectiveness assessment, and we did find that most categories were below our cost effectiveness screening threshold. Again, some had pretty substantial savings, while some had some increased cost. The highest one that we found, the only one that was above our screening threshold, was for those high temperature units, which is why we're proposing a longer implementation schedule, as we think the cost will come down as the technology matures. And again, we have that opportunity to do the technology check-in. Next slide, please. So for the next steps, we are planning to have a set hearing on April 5th with a public hearing scheduled for May 3rd. With that, I'll take any questions.
Questions from committee members?
Madam Chair, just a quick question.
Yes, go
Thank
right
you.
ahead.
Thank you. Ms. Farr, on the zero emission compliance schedule, I think it was page 8 of 20 something, 8 of 23. It was talking about the smaller units. I saw new buildings, January 1st, 2026. There it is. Perfect. Thanks, Paul. And then all buildings. So typical with this, looking at all residences we represent in our district. So a typical home has a water heater, detached water heater. Is that what you're talking about right here in residential homes or something different? I know you got the different sizes.
Right. So actually, if you go a few slides before that to slide number 3, most of the residential tank type water heaters
Tankless, yeah.
will be covered by 1121. So those tank type ones where you have the tank with the water heater, those are all smaller units at residential. It's just those tankless units that are higher BTU because they're on demand. So those tankless units do fall under 1146.2. But the majority of the residential units, those tank types are 1121, which we are in the process of amending, but that's not until much later in the year.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Yes, Senator Delgado.
Just a quick question for staff. For the new construction, the deadline is 2026, but the technology check-in is 2028. Is it because those are, like you say, they're commercially available right now?
Yes, those are commercially available right now. And actually through the building code, those are actually going to be required to be installed at a zero. So if you have a new building with a new water heater, it'll be required to be zero through the building code.
Okay, great. Thank you for clarifying.
I see a hand up in the bigger hearing room. Is someone else there have questions?
We currently have no request to speak in the
Okay. All right.
auditorium.
On my screen, I can see. Oh, sorry. That was my cursor. Sorry. It was my hand. No one there. It was me. A quick question for staff. I'm curious about, how people know whether or not they're going to have to do the electrical upgrades and particularly when we're talking about electrification of multiple appliances at one time. So are we doing any kind of out of the box thinking about any kind of future creative regulations to help guide people's thinking about, if they do a panel upgrade in the future, how do they plan for that?
Yeah, it's a great question, Supervisor. So, typically for those larger types of buildings, they'll have like a contractor, an installer. They have to get, because they have to get building permits and all those things. They follow code and what have you. So we do, from the folks that we've been talking to, they are well versed on those types of things that they're required to do. And of course, electric upgrades is kind of part of that. But you're making me think about maybe this might be a good opportunity, like we do in some of our other rules, to come up with like a brochure type information, packet as part of a post-rule outreach.
Thank you. Want to thank staff. I know this has been a year in the making. It's been a part of our AQMP since 2022. So thank you for your work on this. Any other questions before we open it up for public comment? All right, any public comment there in the hearing room? Because I have Mr. Whittingham here who would like to comment.
The people in the back that want to talk, they're coming up.
Actually,
Okay.
please approach the microphone, state your name.
We don't have a visual of them.
Thanks for the
online.
opportunity. This is Mike Leaming from Parker Boiler Company. We're a local boiler manufacturer. And graciously, they met with us in person because we represent the California Cleaners Association. But specifically, we were talking about that the power generation wasn't available and that the infrastructure is not up to par. 53% of our electricity in the state of California comes from fossil fuels. 30% is imported, the rest is renewable. And then, like for an example, in a particular case, there's a Milton Edie's dry cleaning in Burbank that has two 1,075,000 BTU type 2 units. And he runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In order to him to switch to an electric boiler, he has to get 900 amps into his facility. And the city of Burbank does not have any more power to do that. So that's problem number one. Problem number two, looking at his utility cost at $1.30 a therm in gas and 20 cents per kW for electricity, his $11,000 gas bill will go to over $40,000 a month, 3.2 times the cost. So the reduction, I don't think is there. That's. Thank you.
No other request to speak in the room. Vice Chair.
Okay, I thought they mentioned several people were lined up. We have Mr. Whittingham here in Hall of Administration. Let me get you on camera there. And there he is.
Thank you, Chair and committee members. Peter Whittingham, Whittingham Public Affairs Advisors. You should have all received, as well as staff, a letter from a coalition of trade associations, industry groups, what have you, that simply requesting a delay of several months to continue to work with staff on this. Heard from a number of these trade associations and specifically their members that, and again, no slight to staff, which has been working on this for a year, but they were just very recently made aware of the proposed rule amendments and have significant concerns. Many of those with regards to the potential cost implications of the rule, and that they truly may be understated if we don't include the significant expense of accommodating new units, specifically in retrofits. For example, in multifamily residential, existing multifamily residential developments, the electrical distribution system, a potentially complete overhaul, not only of the electric panel, but other wiring and other components of electrical systems. Heat pumps are not as strong as the current units, so more units are going to be required to spread demand. This will impact current space allocations. Combined water heater and electrical meter closets will no longer be allowed, so many of these existing facilities will have to find solutions for that in constrained space. Also, 70s era and earlier buildings would also include asbestos maintenance and oversight. And also for those buildings where boilers are on the roof, could be a need to modify the structural framing and roofing, potentially all the way to the foundation. So we understand that obviously that this was a component of the 2022 SIP. Understand that CARB will be considering the plan in 2025. So there is clearly time for greater discussion here, certainly over the next few months. What we would be requesting is to convene one or more working group meetings, add more seats to the table, and really expand the discussion to address these concerns, specifically the true cost implications. Appreciate your consideration. Thanks so much.
Thank you. If there's no other public comment, could staff respond? Am I on mute?
Yeah, we currently have about 10 hands raised on the
Oh,
Zoom.
got you. I saw them, but then they said there was nobody else. Oh, they're on the phone. Thank you. Let's go to public comment on the phone.
Our first public comment online is Adrian Martinez. Adrian, go ahead.
Good morning, Chair Mitchell and members of the committee. My name is Adrian Martinez, and I'm here on behalf of Earth Justice. I'm here to support this regulation moving forward. This is a very important part of implementation of the 2022 Air Plan. Earth Justice and our partners spent thousands of hours working on the Air Plan and implementing various regulations, and it's time to get this regulation over the finish line. Staff have done a very good job of many working groups over the last year. This is a regulation that was last updated a quarter century ago. So it's time to get it updated and geared towards zero emissions. I want to comment and respond to some of the requests for delays. I feel like sometimes with these regulations at AQMD, it's kind of death by 1,000 delays. And while it may seem like a month here or a month there is no big deal, it is a big deal. People are suffering now. Air pollution is really bad. We're about to head into the summer smog months where it will be unsafe for many children, elderly, and other folks to go outside for large portions of every month. So we really need to get these regulations on the books. The other thing I want to point out that these aren't changes that are happening overnight. Staff proposed a very, moderate proposal to phase in over time. So a lot of the complaints about it happening too fast and whatnot, this is not happening overnight. It's gonna take a while to be implemented. And then the other thing I want to remind the committee is, we're about to fail to attain the ozone standard that was established in 1997. We have more than 100 tons per day of NOx that we have to get out of our air. This is a significant rule. 5.6 tons per day of NOx pollution is a lot. This will be the largest emission reducing rule since the refinery rule that was adopted in 2021. We need the committee and the Air District to adopt this rule as quickly as possible, and we're very supportive of moving forward. Thank you.
Our next public comment is from Bill Quinn.
Good morning, Chair Mitchell, members of the committee. My name is Bill Quinn. I'm with CEEB, the California Council for Environmental and Economic Balance. Let me start with our requests. For reasons I will go into shortly, we sincerely request at least a 1-month delay in moving this proposal forward. So this is the first time CEEB has asked for a delay in many, many, many years. So we don't do this game of just asking for delays. We think it's really justified in this case. So while CEEB recognizes the need to transition to zero-emission technologies where feasible, we also recognize that these strategies are far more complex and costly to implement than other strategies developed by the district. We recently submitted a comment letter to staff where we expressed concern in 3 areas. The first is our ongoing concern with new demands placed on the grid. Mandates to deploy zero-emission technologies, as this rule does, must be closely aligned and coordinated with the development of energy infrastructure. This is particularly important for the state's electrical grid, which must respond to several equally important but overlapping mandates. In yesterday's edition of the New York Times, they had an excellent article on the growing demand for electricity nationwide and its impacts on the grid. I'd be pleased to provide you with a copy of this article. CEEB encourages the district to continue to work with state agencies, utilities, and all stakeholders to ensure that the proposal takes in consideration, adjust where necessary, its potential on the grid. Our second point is with cost effectiveness. The South Coast AQMD's cost effectiveness analysis seems to focus on single pieces of equipment at single facilities. It has not evaluated the costs associated with retrofits at larger commercial and industrial facilities that have multiple affected pieces of equipment, many which are located in multiple buildings or structures on the site. For many facilities, this rule would trigger expensive infrastructure upgrades, and these costs should be included in the cost analysis. Finally, many CEEB members are in the reclaim program, and as such, CEEB has particular concern with one section of the proposal that would require certain boilers operating at reclaim facilities to be removed from service within 1 year of rule adoption. CEEB does not believe it is feasible to make a changeover involving so many pieces of equipment in such a tight window. Further, the proposal is not clear as to why reclaim facilities are called out with this short compliance deadline. CEEB requests a more reasonable timeframe for these units. We believe the 1-month delay will allow our members to provide additional and critical information on cost effectiveness and for us to work through concerns with the excellent team of staff members who are working on this rule. So thank you very much for considering our request.
Next in the queue is Robina Sewell. Robina, go ahead.
Good morning, Chair and committee members. My name is Robina Sewell. I'm the Executive Director of California Safe Schools and the co-coordinator of the Los Angeles Environmental Justice Network. Our South Coast Basin suffers, as you will know, from the most deadly air quality in the nation, impacting more than 17 million residents here. So setting strong air quality standards to cut pollution from boilers, water heating, and process heating equipment will absolutely save lives. The South Coast AQMD has already delayed the rule for months from the original projected date, which was, I believe, September 2023. And these delays have serious public health consequences by allowing polluting equipment to continue to poison our air. And so now is the time. Now is the time to embrace zero emission standards for all equipment and the categories outlined in this rule. We thank you for your consideration and encourage you to please adopt proposed amended rule 1146.2 quickly. Thank you very much for your time.
Next in line is Thurl Golden.
Yes, good morning. My name is Thurl Golden. I'm a member of the West Long Beach Association, and I would like the board to proceed with the implementation of the rule. At the same time, Supervisor Mitchell mentioned about brochures for homeowners to have information about what exactly is happening and what exactly they need to be in compliance. Me, myself, I have the as needed hot water heaters. And from the presentation this morning, I'm still lost on exactly what I needed, what would my panel, the minimum size panel I would need for the electrical use, what is actually available and where can I purchase the heat pumps. So it is a wide variety of information that is needed to make the implementation successful. And I've noticed over the years, we always seem to have a problem with implementation because it's not properly planned. And with that, I would like to encourage you to move forward with the immediate implementation of this rule. Thank you.
Next in the queue is Serena Palmer.
Good morning, Chair Mitchell and committee members. My name is Serena Palmer, and I'm speaking on behalf of Industrious Labs. As we all know, our region continues to experience the most severe air quality issues, posing heightened health risks and disproportionately affecting environmental justice communities. The Air District must move with urgency to adopt this rule, as continued delays have real and serious consequences for public health, as already mentioned by Rubina and Adrian. The South Coast AQMD has already delayed these amendments by 7 months from the original projected date of September 2023. The time to adopt this rule is now. Timely adoption of this rule will maximize the lead time for market and complementary policy development, allowing staff to move on to other life-saving rules that are top priority for under the 2022 AQMP. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. We appreciate your efforts in delivering clean air to the South Coast Basin.
Next up is Harvey Etter. Harvey, go ahead.
Good morning. Am I being heard?
Yes, Harvey, go ahead.
Okay. Well, my name's Harvey Etter, and I'm talking for myself and for the Public Solar Power Coalition. 1146, 1121, these were in the 1979 and 81 plans, and they included solar. Okay? We've been coming to this district and we're quoted in the record responding to these rules by staff as early as 88 and before to 85. Anyway, also the inventor of the aluminum can solar collector. So this has got to be solar renewables. We brought 100 exhibits from the Sunshot program from DOE to all for the 16 plan. It was never evaluated. There were 8 reports on all types of solar for all applications, and it was completely ignored by this district, by CARB, and EPA. That's outrageous. And we were run out of court at gunpoint by the federal marshals and the FBI trying to file and amend the SIPs in December after submitting this stuff in September and telling whether we had this stuff mailed back to us. It was not going to be on the record. Look, this culture has to change so much to go live on our solar income ecologically based. We've reached our ecological limits, and we're going to destroy ourselves and life as it exists unless we get smart, fast, and equitable. All of these, everything going out, 60% of the 290 gigawatts around the world, the IEA in 21 was fossil fuel owned. We cannot let this happen. Local, state, national, international. This 40% for 617 properties has got to go. Not just cleaner air to breathe, but equity. Who's going to own and control it? Public power is 20% cheaper. It's more efficient, and it's based in the community and local and whatnot. And that's what's got to be done. Okay, and this stuff is being challenged in court. New SIPs coming in, and the FIP, and this stuff. By the way, federal sanctions of not meeting NOx and stuff. that when they just refer to highway funds. The reading of the on the back end contingency measures. The guidance opens it up to everything federal, education, energy, health. There's direct. Okay, this is outrageous, folks. We got to deal with it. That's the real. I'm sorry. Enough is enough. What was our recorder cut off?
You still have time. All right. Moving on to the next commenter, Andrea, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Yeah, my name is Andrea. I work with the People's Collective for Environmental Justice. We're based out of San Bernardino and work in the Inland Empire. Just thank you for working on this rule. We usually work on outdoor pollution issues, so we're familiar with the South Coast, and we're usually working on outdoor pollution from freight. But about a couple of years ago, we worked with the AQMD to get to work together on putting in air filters, indoor air filters and indoor air monitors through IQ Air in homes in San Bernardino. And that was a super illuminating project, we think, because we really learned about how unsafe it is, even our indoor air quality, right? Especially when you're living next to rail yards, freeways, warehouses, et cetera. And so, you know, we're taking very seriously how important indoor air quality is and how important it is to reduce the emissions in our homes. And so this rule is very significant because of that. We think, especially in communities like ours that are incredibly overpolluted, we have to be taking every single strategy possible, and that includes regulations like these. And especially the impact, right? The impact of this rule is like taking off like 500,000 cars or something like that, right? The equivalent of that pollution. So we're not talking about just reducing a little bit here. We're talking about doing some major reductions to the basin, and all of that is so important to us. We want to ask that you move forward on the timeline that you have now. We think it could be symbolic for you guys to all move and pass this in May. That way that we can go into this, do this before the summer starts, as like a symbol of, one day we won't be having to deal with, the summer smog that we have every single year now. And just know from the experience and some of the freight work we've done, infrastructure has always been a problem. But at the same time, I think we're witnessing how infrastructure problems are being resolved in real time, like with the passing of these regulations, and actually seeing us meet our goals earlier than the dates that we expected, because all this coordination really starts to really move in this implementation phase. So yeah, thank you for the rule, and just know that you have a partner in us to work together on supporting and developing more incentive programs. We think those are going to be extremely vital when we're talking about local businesses and just the retrofitting and transition of residential communities. So thank you.
Next up for public comment is Ana Gonzalez.
Morning, everyone. Ana Gonzalez, Executive Director at the Center for Community Action and Environmental Justice, servicing the Inland Valley, both San Bernardino and Riverside counties. I wanted to encourage you to adopt this proposed amended rule today. It would support to save many, many lives. And like the previous speakers have said, this is long overdue. Unfortunately, the South Coast region continues to fail to attain the federal standards for ozone and particulate matter. And we are seeing that with a drastic rise in asthma, COPD, lung cancer, and other cancers in our community members. We strongly support this rule. We look forward to its adoption and implementation as soon as possible. There is no more time to wait. Our family's health is at risk every day. We understand that the cost of methane will increase because we have allowed the fossil fuel industry to price gouge and essentially affect our small businesses and our families, shoving down our throats to depend on gas appliances. But it's time that we enter that just transition phase where we are adopting cleaner and better appliances and just better equipment for our families to breathe clean air. Funding is obviously needed to advance zero emission equipment, and there's tons of money coming down the pipeline from the federal and the state government that we should take advantage of, and we can support our small businesses and our families to transition to that cleaner energy. While we hold polluters accountable, we can take a step forward now and begin a just transition for indoor air quality improvement to keep our families safe. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And just before we go on to the next member of the public, I just want to clarify that this item is not agendized today to be voted on by this committee. So I just wanted to be clear that as people are testifying, it's not agendized for us to take actual action. So thank you.
All right, 7 more in the queue currently. Next up is Curtis Coleman.
Good morning, members of the committee. Kurt Coleman, Executive Director of the Southern California Air Quality Alliance. I'd like to, I'm here today to echo and support Bill Quinn and Sieb in their request. So I'm not going to reiterate all of the points he made. I would like to point out a couple of things. This, as the staff pointed out, this proposed rule would affect over 1 million units. This is probably a rule that affects more pieces of equipment than any rule that the district has ever considered before. It basically requiring the replacement eventually of over 1 million pieces of equipment. It affects facilities that are generally not regulated by the district. Much of this equipment is exempt under Rule 219 from permit requirements. So I have a hard time understanding why it is necessary to avoid a 1-month delay to provide some symbolic show of something. I would think it makes more sense to take a month to get the data so that the district is going into this, the board has the full information in front of it before it takes action. The earliest compliance dates for existing buildings, existing facilities is 2029, January of 2029. That is almost 5 years from now. The new facilities, the district staff has indicated, will be taken care of by building code requirements. So I don't see how a 1-month delay to get information that affects the efficacy of this rulemaking is going to delay implementation of any rule that is finally adopted. So that being said, I think there's ample reason for the board to consider a 1-month delay to allow for the information to be provided that can only make this rule a better rule. Thank you.
Next is Chris Chavez. Go ahead, Chris.
Yes, thank you. Chris Chavez, Deputy Policy Director at Coalition for Clean Air. I just very briefly want to state our support for South Coast AQMD's efforts in establishing this rule, as well as the current timeline that the district is proposing. We want to make sure that we get a rule done as quickly as possible. As we know, South Coast AQMD and the South Coast Air Basin is in extreme non-attainment for national ambient air quality standards, and the district needs to, must do everything feasible in order to meet those standards. So we know that this rule is a very significant rule in terms of what it is projected to reduce in terms of emissions, and really encourage the district to continue along forward and getting this groundbreaking rule moving forward. Thank you very much.
Next is Bill Pierce. Go ahead, Bill.
Good morning, Bill Pierce, the Boeing Company. Just wanted to offer a couple additional comments, echoing the comments made by Bill Quinn and Kirk Coleman, but I guess we're just concerned about a couple key items. One is the language in the current proposed rule with respect to reclaim facilities having to complete their boiler upgrades within 1 year from the date of adoption. The other one is with respect to the off ramps with respect to utility or the availability of electricity from the utilities. And the third item is the compliance plans embedded in the current proposed rule. With respect to the compliance plans, and we've spoken to the district previously, but I mean, we're looking for something that has the ability to encompass more than a 1 year time frame. We have one facility that has roughly 20 units that will all be required to be changed under the existing proposal within a 3-year time span. And so we're just trying to see that if there can be changes made to that language. As Kurt Coleman mentioned, I mean, there's plenty of time. There's time to be able to look at these things and evaluate and still get a rule adopted that won't change the basic requirements of the rule, but definitely changes in those type of in that type of language will help us as we move forward to implement these requirements at our facilities. We do appreciate all the time Michael Krause, Heather Farr, their team has spent a lot of time with us, several meetings to go over the rule, and we just think at least a 30-day pause will give us the chance, especially when the final draft of the rule, I don't believe, is due out till the first week in April. And so just be able to see how the district has considered our comments that have been made previously and how they might be incorporated in the rule if they are. So thank you.
Next for public comment is Kim Orby.
Hi, good morning. My name is Kimberly Orbe, and I'm the Sierra Club Angeles Chapter Conservation Program Manager. Good morning, board members, and thank you to all the staff who have been working on these rules. The Sierra Club strongly supports the adoption of this rule with further delays. 1 month has somehow turned into 7 months from the original projected date of September 2023. So I just echo the comments of other folks who have made in support for this rule. I just want to share that these rules really have an impact on real people and continue to harm and pollute our air, our homes, where we work, and places where we deserve to be safe, and in places where we think we're protected. The biggest cause here is really lives, and I just felt like I really had to state that again. The South Coast region continues to fail to attain the federal standards for smog and particulate matter. So yeah, I just want to elevate the points that have been made in support of this rule, and that it's the South Coast responsibility to deliver clean air to these communities without further delay. Again, just thankful for the leadership and the ongoing work of staff to this rule. I'm really excited to continue engaging on this and the other rules, including CARP, which I think is getting a rebrand, a new name. But thank you all for your time.
Next is Mark Abramowitz.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Mark Abramowitz with Community Environmental Services, and I've been participating in the working groups for development of this rule since it started. And I really have to say that this is just an incredibly sweeping rule, but more importantly, staff has done just an incredible job. Heather and her team have have really gone well beyond what I thought the level of analysis was going to be in some of the various areas that I was particularly concerned about. Things like costs and need for upgrades in the electrical for homes. They've really done a good job here. I also wanted to comment here that there are a number of products that could be used to comply with this rule that are not available in this country or in California. Fuel cells are used throughout Japan and in Europe that could meet some of the requirements here. They're not available in this country, and this is just a tremendous way that the district could make markets here for some of these products that are available elsewhere, and create jobs at the same time and reduce air pollution. So fuel cells are not going to work in every area and for every application, but even for high temperature uses, fuel cells can be used. But these products just need the regulatory message from the district to be able to develop where needed, as well as make them available here. So staff has done a great job here, and I really want to compliment them on this. And this is an incredible and impressive and impactful role. Thank you.
Next up for public comment is Jane Williams.
Good morning. I'm Jane Williams, the Executive Director of California Communities Against Toxics. I want to thank staff for an amazing effort on this rule. A little piece of history: I served on the Federal Advisory Committee on the Industrial Combustion Coordinated Rulemaking, which included the federal boilers rule in the early 90s. So it's amazing to appear before you today with this rule in front of us. Health considerations must drive policy, especially in South Coast, where we face some of the worst air pollution in the country. And I just want to point out, there's serious incentives in both Build Back Better and in the IRA for electrification. I want to point to Rewiring America, because we had a prior commenter saying, wait, I want to do this in my house, but I don't know how. And I also want to point out that for small businesses, there's incentives, there's all kinds of opportunities out there to electrify boilers. So I also want to point out that Schneider Electric has their microgrid center of excellence for the country in San Diego. They would love to work with small and medium-sized business owners to put in microgrids to electrify the boilers that are currently in use across the basin. So there's all kinds of opportunities, as Mark pointed out, to get the kinds of advanced technologies that we need for electrification to come into the basin at scale. And this rule will drive those innovations. The significant NOx reductions for this measure are impressive. I can't underscore the importance of getting NOx reductions in big bulk boluses like we are for this rule. And I also want to emphasize to with my prior colleagues that the rule has already been delayed. There's been lots of time for industry to take a look at what the implications of the rule are. And they were successful in getting all kinds of incentives in the IRA as well. So I don't believe that delay is an option. And I urge the Station Resource Committee to move the rule forward. Thank you so much for the opportunity to comment on the rule.
Next up is Christy Zamani.
Good afternoon. My name is Christy Zamani. I serve as Executive Director of Day One, a public health organization that has served the greater San Gabriel Valley for over 36 years. During this time, we've passed countless clean air policies that have effectively advance the quality of life by implementing smoke-free parks, outdoor dining, and multi-unit housing. In the most recent years, we've been focusing on advancing policies that also protect people from advancing indoor air quality, especially in DAC communities. We've been doing this through advocating for induction stoves, solar rooftops, air quality monitors, and solar storage. Through this process, we've learned so much, and we know that indoor air quality directly impacts public health. When we have the tools and paths to do better, we simply need to do better. This is one of those times. I'm here today because I support the proposed amended rule and ask that you do too. We can no longer afford delays. We know delays go nowhere. It's just another effort to just slow down the process. We tell our kids that this is an urgent issue, and I think we need to show up and behave that way too. As clean air leaders, we are looking to you to lead the way. There has never been a clearer connection between climate and public health. This is the right thing to do for people, public health, and the planet. Thank you for your time.
Vice Chair, there is no more hands raised online and no more requests to speak in the room.
Thank you very much, and thanks to all the members of the public, those in person and electronically who participated in this agenda item. I just had one quick question, follow-up for staff. We've heard that that there may be some additional costs associated with this rule that weren't outlined in the presentation. Do you have any comment on that?
Sorry for the delay. Yes, Supervisor, we are in discussion with one of the stakeholders. They have been, we've been working with them since November, actually, on their costs. They did provide us some, and we've been kind of doing our back and forth, and it seems that they do still have a few more items they want to bring to us. I do want to highlight, however, that I'm not quite sure that's really going to change probably the bottom line of the rule. The way the rule is constructed, of course, deals with an ultimate goal of zero emissions, and also sets up a stage by which there's an implementation timeframe for these different types of equipment, whether they're commercially available currently, as Heather highlighted, or ones that need that longer timeframe. And we have built that into the rule already, as well as alternative options for facilities with multiple units, for facilities that have trouble getting upgrades from the utilities, things like that would provide off-ramps for those situations.
Thank you, appreciate that. And again, next steps, we won't be voting on this today as it's currently being recommended by staff. It would come to, walk me through the next steps, please.
So this is an informational item, and so this is scheduled to go to the board for May. And so I would like to suggest that maybe we bring the item back to Station Resource Committee and allow us to continue to work with the stakeholders and see if we can resolve these issues. We do want to revisit the reclaim provision that was brought up. And then also it's like I wanted to emphasize that the timeline for the existing units, although it's 2029, it's when the unit reaches 25 years of its useful life. So it's not an immediate, everyone needs to meet that zero emission requirement right off the bat. I also wanted to highlight that the infrastructure provision does allow 2 18-month delays as long as they provide the sufficient information for that.
So let me clarify, you're not proposing a delay. You're simply saying it will come back before this committee in April, and the plan is to come before full board in May, correct?
That's correct.
Great. Senator Delgado, your hands up.
Yes, thank you. Susan stole my thunder. That's exactly what I was going to recommend, but
okay.
I'm supportive of this rule. I think it's wonderful. It's the right thing to do, but it sounds like there needs to be additional discussion. And so if we could bring it back, that would be great.
Wonderful. Again, not proposing a delay. We'll simply hear it again before it was already anticipated being brought before the full board in May. So that is our plan. Hope all the members of the public are following and understand the next steps as well. Moving on, since there's no action taken and we've heard public comment on agenda item 1, items 2 through 4 are receive and file written reports only that don't require presentations. Are there any committee members that have questions or comments on agenda items 2 through 4? All right, seeing none. Does anyone have any other business to be brought before the committee? Item 5? Seeing none, let's open it up for general public comment. Agenda item 6, general public comment, please.
Currently, we have no requests to speak in the room, and no one has their hand raised online.
All right, thank you so much. This will conclude the Stationary Source Committee. Our next meeting will be Friday, April 19th at 10:30. Everyone have a great day.
Have a nice weekend.
You too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.